Hey there. I want to talk about synthesizing scales and kind of bridging the gap between playing scales and making music. Like, when does that happen, and how can you get better at doing it instead of just throwing yourself into the crucible with complex chords and all of that? There's a million different ways to get better at playing guitar, and this what I'm about to talk about is just one strategy, and it's one that worked really well for me and actually made a huge impact on the way that I think about melody and just guitar in general. So I'll show you how to set up kind of the bass line experience, and I'll talk about it real quick. So what we want to do is just make a drone, and it can be in any key, and you can do a simple chord or you could just do a note. But the way to do it is, if you have a looper pedal, just make a blank loop. So you record and you hit play, and it'll just loop blankly. And then you want to have like a pretty long, wet reverb, and you can swell that note in, and so that it kind of loops on itself and creates this continuous note. So I'm going to do that real quick, and I can stop it and talk about it, but you can kind of see the process. So I'm going to start the loop. I'm going to be off camera real quick. I'm going to make an empty loop. I'm recording, and then now that is done recording, and I'm gonna overdub, and I'm gonna kind of swell in. I'm just gonna do like a C chord. I'm gonna swell it in, and it'll start looping. So let's see that. Right, so now I'm recording. I'm gonna hit like a C. And now it's looping, right? It's not a perfect loop. We could do a second go here. So it's going. It doesn't need rhythm. So now we have a drone in C. I'm gonna turn off this reverb that has a super long decay, and I'll play with something else. Let me turn this off so I'm not talking over it. So we have a loop. What we're gonna do over it, I mean, it really depends, and I'm flexible, so you guys can tell me, but I'll just kind of go through some scales over what we're just looping a tonic, and I could show you the vibe of each scale. And it's less about like the notes themselves. I'm not going to talk too much about the notes, but it's more about the feeling you get from the scale and how it applies around the tonic. That may sound complicated, but just bear with me. Let's start with the major scale. So that was the major scale. I mean, what was the main vibe of it? It's very clean and refreshing, almost like a spring well. I'm gonna get kind of heady on this video, but that's kind of the whole point, is like, what do these scales make you feel, and what do they make you picture, and like what's the energy of what's happening? And when you're playing over a major chord like that, for me the main energy is like very pure. almost like classical music or like something from like the Shire or something like that, you know? So what if we do something like the Mixolydian mode, which is like a whole different scale, but still centered around this C tonic drone. Let's listen to that. So what's the deal with Mixolydian? How'd that make you feel? What was going on there, right? So when we were doing the major scale, you could play all the diatonic chords in the C major scale series, right? And they all fit. With the Mixolydian, what you're doing is mainly, the main vibe of it for me is going from a C down to a B flat. You know? That's like the main thing of it. And for me, Mixolydian is a much darker sound, but it's still kind of majory. It's still hopeful, but kind of like spicy and kind of exotic. And we can play all this just over a droning tonic, and it's giving us the opportunity to express ourselves through the scale to get an energy. Does that make sense? That's the way that I started to synthesize scales. It's not just running the notes, it's more about finding the shapes over the tonic that expresses the core characteristic of the mode, what makes the mode, or the scale, right? So let's do like, you know, something like Phrygian. It's gonna be very different. Check this out. Completely different, and all we're doing is changing scales over a C tonic. So how is it possible that just one chord can give us all these flavors to play over, you know? That's the power of scales. That's how we're starting to bridge the gap between what is music and what is just a scale. Why does just playing a scale by itself not sound like music? But then all of a sudden when you start playing it in the right, you know, format or the right collections of notes over something as simple as a drone, it starts to sound extremely musical. What is that? And I don't have the answer. That's more of a, you know, metaphysical question or something more like philosophy for somebody that's way more of a teacher or a studier of music than me. But that was the gateway drug for me to start really being able to express myself and have an understanding of what a certain mode should feel and when to use it in certain musical contexts, right? Let's do like one more. I'll do like Lydian maybe, and then maybe I'll just have an open one where I don't have any mode. I just play, and you can see what happens when you synthesize everything and smush it all together with chromaticism and melodic minor or harmonic minor or whatever, you know. When you truly have, you know, an understanding of the scales and you start to develop your own voice through them. That's the magic of doing this. And it's also just a really great way to meditate. You know, if you have a really stressful day or whatever, it feels really good to just make melody and not worry about harmony. Just worry about playing melody and making melody. Okay, so we're going to go the opposite direction as Mixolydian. Instead of going from C to B flat, we're going to go from C to D. The magic of Lydian. Lydian is a very special mode. At least it is to me. It's the sound of freedom. It's the sound of infinite. At least that's what it makes me feel. What does it make you guys feel? You know? What else to talk on this? What can I talk about on this subject? Make a drone, make a loop. Play over it. There's no rhythm. It's all melody. What can you say? How can you express yourself? How can you fill the space? How can you leave space? I'll play a little bit more and maybe I'll try to demonstrate that it's not about just filling with a bunch of notes and shredding. It's about saying something and having a voice. Some, you know, whatever you have inside of you. Thanks, guys. See you next time.